This little girl had just gotten off the metro with her mom. We were passing out flyers. She just stopped. She was staring. I asked, "Do you know her?" She looks up at me and she says, "She looks just like me." Every time I look at this picture, it makes me emotional.
There's so many missing people of color in the U.S. African Americans remain missing 4 times longer than white Americans.
That number is alarming.
We hear from families all the time, the police is turning us away, the media wouldn't respond.
Looking for a missing daughter.
And it drove me and my sister-in-law, Natalie, to want to do something about it to help these other families. Because if not us, who?
It's our job to bring them home.
Thank you for calling Black and Missing Foundation.
The police was like, "How you know she just ain't leave?"
The detective kept saying she ran away. And I'm like, she didn't run away. It was like a punch in the face.
When a Black person is in distress, missing, it's not a big deal
To law enforcement.
because they don't think we have much to lose.
This one always gets me, just remembering when she was a little girl. You blame yourself because it's never done.
My sister went missing in 2009. On all the major news stations, nobody would talk to me.
Gwen Ifill coined the term missing white woman syndrome.
If you don't meet those criteria, blonde hair, blue eyes, your stories are not newsworthy.
Here's my niece. She's missing. Her story is just as compelling.
We have nothing for our missing people except Black folks, spit, and grit.
That's why I'm on 10 right now.
And this is not one and done. We will be back.
We don't want families to ever give up on hope.
1 year, 5, 10, 20. We have seen miracles happen.
These men and women that are going missing look like my siblings or look like my parents and my grandparents. They matter. Our community matters.
Wow, the Black and Missing Foundation finally, mainstream media is starting to recognize, but more importantly, so are law enforcement. There's a new HBO documentary. You just saw the trailer there. Before we bring on our very, very special guest this morning, let's bring on the president and CEO of the National Newspaper Publicists Association, Dr. Benjamin F. Chavez Jr. Dr. Chavez, good morning.
Good morning, Stacy. On behalf of the National Newspaper Publicists Association, I just want to encourage Carter Richards, our chair, and all the 230 African-American-owned newspapers and media companies. I want to thank you, Stacey, for your leadership on this issue. The NNPA for years now has been leading the charge on missing Black girls, missing Black boys, missing Black people, and finally it's getting some recognition. But we got to continue to press this issue, because if we don't raise this issue, nobody else will.
Absolutely. And Black and Missing will premiere on HBO with 2 back-to-back episodes on November 23rd, followed by the release of the remaining pair of episodes on November 24th. All episodes will be available to stream after airing on HBO Max. The 4-part series, which was 3 years in the making, follows Black and Missing Foundation founders Derrica and Natalie Wilson as they dive into specific cases and break down how systemic behaviors and attitudes stem from centuries of deeply rooted racism. The docuseries also exposes the stark disparity in the media coverage of white and Black missing persons. By keeping these stories and the missing in the news media, Derrica and Natalie put the increased pressure on police departments to keep cases open and active. Joining us now is Derrica and Natalie Wilson of the Black and Missing Foundation, and Shawn Wilkinson, the stepfather of Akia Eggleston, whose story is featured in the HBO docuseries. Good morning, Natalie, Derrica, and good morning, Shawn, as well.
Good
morning.
It's great to have you this morning. Finally, some real attention.
Thank you for having.
Yeah, absolutely. Natalie, is great to see you as always. Finally, some real attention is being paid to this critical issue. Natalie, Derrica, first, walk us through how it came about with HBO.
I believe Natalie's mic Well, this has been 3 years in the making, working with Soledad O'Brien, and they saw we were winning a couple of awards, and they reached out to us and said, "Hey, we really want to work with you ladies to highlight these stories," and really it took off from there. Us working together and getting these cases to the forefront. So
Yeah,
it's been 3 years.
yeah, and I guess we're having some issues right now, some technical issues with Natalie, but she'll hop back on. But Derrica, you guys started this years ago. Just remind our audience, how did you get started and why you got started?
So we've been sounding the alarm for nearly 14 years. The inspiration behind the organization was a young lady by the name of Tamika Houston. She went missing from my hometown of Spartanburg, South Carolina. And despite the fact that her aunt worked in media relations, she really struggled to garner national coverage. And months later, Natalie Holloway went missing, and we all know the name Natalie Holloway and Kaylee Anthony and Chandra Levy, and the list goes on and on. So Natalie and I recognized that there was really an issue in our community. And in order to address an issue, you have to be willing to be the solution. So my background is law enforcement. Natalie's background is public relations. And those are the two critical professions needed to help our community, to help us find us. So we started from there, and we're still going nearly 14 years later.
Wow. And Natalie, welcome back. I think we got you now. You know, you and Derrica are twins, I understand, with the same last name. But Natalie, I know it's been, and obviously I'm just kidding. They are actually sister-in-laws, I believe.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so Natalie, I know that the journey is still, we talk about where you're at now, but it's still a long journey ahead. Can you just give us an understanding of just how many people of color right now in America are missing? Could you estimate that for us?
Okay. Well, according to FBI stats, 40% of all persons missing are of color. And that's about 200,000 people reported missing this year alone. Oh, I'm sorry, 2020 alone. And the matter is that's just reported missing, but we know that there's so many people that aren't reported missing, like the immigrant community, the Hispanic community. So it's definitely an issue that's affecting our communities, and we need to get law enforcement involved. We need to get the media to cover these stories because there's a sense of urgency.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the HBO documentary, Shawn Wilkinson is in the documentary. Shawn's story is highlighted. Shawn, this has to have been extremely emotional for you. Talk about your experience and how the Black and Missing Foundation has stepped in to assist you.
Well, thank you. And thank you foremost this morning for allowing our family to continue to keep our daughters, our sister, our mother's name in the media, and I especially give big applause and mountaintop shout outs to Black and Missing, because if it wasn't for the work that they do and the work that they have done, and I know they will continue to do, we wouldn't have had any attention that we have had thus far. And it was actually my wife who actually reached out to Black and Missing on the onset of my daughter's missing persons case that now is in the hands of cold case homicide with the Baltimore City Police Department. And they actually took the time to go into the community, hand out flyers, talk to the police themselves, which you'll see all in the documentary. But still, to this day, there is a big lack of communication, and it's like a hush hush within the community and with the police department about what's going on with her case and many other cases like hers. And I think Black and Missing has been a pivotal moving point in our case and probably many others. So again, I cannot, and my family cannot say thank you enough for what they have done for us.
Yeah, and Shawn, it has to have been such a harrowing experience to one day find out that your precious daughter is missing. what was the first response you got from law enforcement when you contacted them?
So initially, when we contacted them, which I wasn't the one who contacted them on the onset, but a police report was done. And then from there, it kind of was a sliding board effect. Like you'll see in the documentary, when you talk to the police, she's a runaway, she's an adult. The stigma of, oh, you got to wait 72 hours before you can report someone missing, which is all false, which we found out through the Black and Missing Foundation is not true. You can report somebody missing if you don't know where they are, period. So there are a lot of things that have been portrayed by mostly probably people watching television or just not knowing, that a lot of people get pulled into. So, and again, the communication with the police department has always been piss poor from the onset of her case. And it's like pulling teeth to get anything out of them.
Yeah. And Natalie and Derrica, that he mentioned that 72 hours, everyone is told 72 hours, but we also are told that the first 48 hours are critical in any type of criminal case or any type of case, period. So if you're waiting 72 hours, what does that tell you?
That really is a myth, and that is something that needs to change across the board. Every state and jurisdiction operates differently. So in some jurisdictions, you can report your loved ones missing immediately. Some jurisdictions, you must wait 24 hours. What we are hoping as an outcome is that all of these jurisdictions start looking at best practices and holistically across the board allow families to report their loved ones missing immediately, because time is of the essence. And I really wanted to point out, in Akia's case, we're not just looking for one person, we're looking for two, because she was pregnant. So I think that is a very important point to make as well. There are two people that are missing in this particular case.
Wow. And there you see Akia, 26 years old now. She went missing on the 3rd of May in 2017. And there's her description. Please, folks, take it down. Female, Black, height about 4'8", 145 pounds, black hair, shoulder length hair, brown eyes. Look at this beautiful young woman. And as Derrica just pointed out, she was also pregnant. So please take a good look at that and just have your eyes and ears open for any information that can lead to her being returned safely to her father and her family. Dr. Chavez, I know you want to jump in here too.
Well, again, the Black and Missing Foundation, we want to salute Natalie and Derrica and Shawn. We will continue to keep your family in our prayers.
Thank you very much.
I think that this is a national issue. And I think recently we've seen in the so-called mainstream media how they do a preference when a white female in particular goes missing. There's almost an immediate reaction. But when it comes to people of color, because of systemic racism in our society, we are triaged or sometimes not even responded to at all. So thank God for the Black and Missing Foundation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we know we're gonna see Shawn's story, Akia's story, but what else can we expect in this 4-part documentary, Natalie and Derrica?
Well, Stacey, you can expect to see a bird's eye view, an insider's view as to the challenges that these families face in getting access and help from law enforcement and the media, and to come alongside Soledad O'Brien just to highlight this issue and the challenges that we face. So we want your viewers to support us and to stay tuned, because it's something that's needed. We can no longer turn a blind eye on this issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And Derrica, can you speak to, you're involved in the documentary, but is there something that really struck you, perhaps that you either perhaps put it in the back of your mind and it just thrust to the forefront, or something you hadn't really thought of? Give us a sense of the documentary. What may have struck you being so close to it?
Natalie and I, we've been working with these families for so many years, and this is definitely a labor of love. What you would see in the documentary is our passion, our fight to stand alongside these families to fight with them every step of the way. And, we're not going to give up, and we're not going to allow them to give up. So what you will see is again, a bird's eye view at what these families are going through, this uphill battle, and our passion to ignite that fire in them to keep going.
Yeah, and Shawn, obviously, going back to you and the situation with your daughter, you said your wife reached out to Black and Missing. What were your expectations? You've already stated how grateful you are, but what were your expectations initially?
Well, being that this is unfortunately the first time myself or anybody in our family that ever experienced any such thing like this, we didn't know what to expect. And it was actually Black and Missing who set expectations for us themselves, and Derek, one of the persons who helped them out a lot. They actually told us what they were going to do for us, not what we can do for them. And it was from those conversations that we've had over the many years now that we've had that have continued to keep us focused on the end goal, how to conduct visuals, how to reach out to other families, how to talk to the police, how to continue to contact social media, how to do everything we possibly can to keep Akia's name and her unborn child in social media. So they have actually wrote the standard operating procedure, in my opinion, on how to look for an individual, Black, brown, or any other color, in my opinion. So they have set the bar, and in my opinion, people need to get on board, whether they donate to their foundation or reach out to them and ask, how can I assist in your duties and jobs and roles of responsibility? Because again, you never have too many hands helping to push the wheel to find a loved one.
Yeah, and just to stay with you for 1 second, Shawn, as a parent, we kind of speculate, but you're actually walking in these shoes. We watch as, and we talked about this, the Natalie Holloways, the Gabby Petitos of the world get all the attention. From your perspective, with a child missing, and you see the attention not only law enforcement but media gives to people who are not of color. What does that do to you and your family when there's no attention paid to Akia?
I'll say this first. I appreciate Gabby Petito's father, first and foremost, calling out and saying all people need the same attention. So I applaud him for that. Moving beyond that, that needs to go into the police departments. It needs to go into the efforts that other foundations or other groups put into their standard operating procedures, and realize that everyone should have the same rights when they go missing, that a blonde-haired, white, blue-eyed girl or boy, for that matter, has. Now, the attention set, again, we all know what it is. It stems from racial discrimination, maybe the communities that they live in, maybe families don't press the issue enough. So we also have to look at the fact that our communities need to be involved. And I think that is just a bigger issue as them not getting the same attention that the police don't give them. So communities need to get involved just as well.
Yeah, and Natalie and Derrica, Nicole McDaniel wants to hear about your success rates and these. She says, and how, if they have potentially helped more Black missing people be found over the years. Could you talk about your success rate?
Absolutely. Because of community involvement, we have assisted in bringing closure to close to 400 families. So those are families that can sleep at night. But think about how much more we can do if we can work collectively, as Shawn said, and get the community involved. It's Derrica and I pretty much doing all of the work. And if we can get founding if we can get more funding, we can help bring in the team and strengthen our team. And we need more people to like and share these posts so it can go viral, because there's so many families that are hurting and they want to find their missing loved ones. And we're working very hard to make our missing household names too, like the Gabby Petito story.
Yeah, and Angela Connolly is asking, have you reached out to the Gabby Foundation to combine efforts?
Honestly, we have not connected with Gabby Petito's family or the foundation yet, but that is something that is on our radar and we plan to do.
Yeah, here's the thing too. Have folks been? I think the real question should be who's reaching out to you, right? Because I know that this work you've been, like you said, you and Derrica have been at this for 14 years, and it's not been. You're not for profit. You're trying to help save lives, trying to help bring, in a lot of cases, closure to families. So. Where are we? Are we finding more people reaching out to you guys now? HBO finally reached out. Is anyone else reaching out? Any of these foundations reaching out?
We welcome that. We hope that they will, reach out to us. Again, Natalie and I, we've been doing this for nearly 14 years. We work full-time jobs, and we also run the organization to help these families. So we do not take a salary from this. We're doing this because this is our calling. This is our purpose. And these families desperately need us, and we're going to continue. And we invite everyone to join forces on this movement. These families need our help.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to piggyback on what Derrica said, Stacey, the media, they have been contacting us. I remember when Gabby Petito's story broke a couple of weeks ago. I think every media outlet reached out to us as to how they can continue the conversation or use their platform to highlight this disparity. So we don't want it to be a fad. We want to bring about change through those conversations.
And I think that's so important, Dr. Chavez, what you just said. Don't want it to be a fad. Don't want it to be a moment. It's a movement, right, Dr. Chavez?
Absolutely. And again, for 14 years, this foundation that Black and Missing Foundation, Derrica and Natalie, that you've laid. And I think that Shawn, Natalie and Derrica, Stacey, all of them have said one critical thing: our community. It's one thing for people outside of our community to pay attention to the issues that affect us. But when we assert, that's why the Black press is so important. We're pleading our own cause. And when you plead your own cause, other people will pay attention to your cause. But if we take for granted Black and missing in our own community, then then others will use that as an excuse. Well, this own community doesn't even pay attention to this issue. So I think it is critical. And I just want to promise Derrica, Natalie, and Shawn, and to our listening audience, the Black press, we're not going to let this go. I'm not talking about I'm talking about the front page coverage in our newspapers about Black and missing. This is a movement, and we're not going to let up in this movement until we get the change that's needed.
Yeah, and a couple of your publishers, Dr. Chavez, certainly agree with you. Bobby Henry talks about creating an NMPA page each week of missing Black families, children, brothers, and sisters. And Cheryl Smith says, we're dedicating our resources. This is so important, and we must be the advocates. Cheryl Smith, of course, of the Texas Metro News, and Bobby Henry of the West Side Gazette in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. So what you're saying, of course, Dr. Chavez, is backed by the publishers. Natalie, Derrica, so the documentary comes out. You like you said, you're getting some attention now. You're getting attention now from media outlets. What's the next step for the Black and Missing Foundation now?
Well, Stacey, the next step for us is to be in the communities, in the jurisdictions where we know that there are a large number of people of color reported missing. We would like to create satellite offices in Atlanta, Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, so we can have boots on the ground there and help these families. But most importantly, we want to continue the conversation. We want to continue the movement to help those most impacted.
And if I may add on to what Natalie stated, we also want to be in the midst of these police departments across the country. We understand that things need to change as far as the category and how they're classifying our children as runaways. We need to get rid of that. We need to look at the response time, the reporting time. We want to be the ally and partner with them to implement these best practices. We want our media partners to continue to highlight these stories. We understand that not every case is going to make the 5 and 10 o'clock news cycle. We understand that not every case is going to elevate up to mainstream media, but there are resources that they have at their fingertip utilizing social media. We want to continue. As Natalie stated, this is not a fad. This is real life. This is a pandemic that has been plaguing our community for far too long.
Yeah, it is a pandemic. That well said, of course, Derrica. Shawn, I want to go back to you. Can you kind of describe and I'm sure you've probably been asked this by law enforcement and others, but the relationship between your daughter and you guys and what was going on around the time that she went missing?
So during the time that my daughter went missing, she was living in Baltimore City, and I was living in Montgomery County, Maryland. So we were living about an hour outside of one another. And she's a young adult, trying to live her life, trying to take care of her children, or her daughter at the time. And we had communication. We talked. She talked to her brother and sister more often than she talked to me. Just living life. So we had a decent relationship. But one of the things I tell people is that you never can know everything about your child. And I would tell any parent, that is listening right now, be in your children's stuff. Whether they're 25 or 16 or 10, know more about your children. And that was one of the things that I can say that I did not know enough about is the community, or who my daughter was hanging with, who her friends were, or I'll say so-called friends, because I don't know who they were, who her associates were. And that was the breakdown that I can say as a parent that I live with every day, having that communication with my daughter. I regret it. And I tell people, parents mostly, know your children, be in their business, and try to have those open and honest conversations, so that if this happens to another family, you as a parent can assist the police better than what I was able to.
Yeah, and I asked that question only because it's people talk about runaways, and it doesn't matter, right, Natalie and Derrica, if it is a runaway, they still deserve some attention. Find out why they ran away, right? In this case with Shawn, there was no animosity, there was no fighting, right? So she went missing. Something happened here.
Well, in her particular case, a very important point of fact is that Akia was 8 months pregnant. She was high risk pregnancy, and she didn't show up for her baby shower. So that is also a critical piece, which is why it's even more urgent.
Yeah.
And even if they
Go ahead,
ran
Nat.
away, we have to be mindful. What are they running away from? And ultimately, what are they running away to? And we know that law enforcement often classifies our children as runaways, and therefore they don't receive the Amber Alert or any type of media coverage. So a lot of times, these individuals, our children, our mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers, aren't running away. There's something more involved.
Yeah, it's often something more involved. We hear the stories so many times that that maybe they were just upset. The cops say, the law enforcement say they probably was just upset about something, and they went to a friend's house, or did you check the drug house down the block and things like. We hear that, right? Isn't that what we hear when it comes to missing people of color?
We do hear that. I think it's equally important for all of your listeners to understand why people are going missing. Mental health plays a huge role. Domestic violence plays a huge role. Human trafficking plays a huge role. So we can't be numb to the fact that these are factors that's occurring in our community that is leading to our people disappearing. So we have to be able to address those issues. We have to be proactive in our community so we can better protect them, our children, our elders, and the list goes on and on.
Wow. We just continue to applaud the work that the Black and Missing Foundation is doing. Natalie and Derrica, all these years, you've been shouldering that load yourselves. And so we certainly take our hats off to you. And Shawn, our prayers continue to be with you and your daughter and your wife, your family as a whole. Dr. Chavez, your closing thoughts.
Lucha continua, the struggle continues. And certainly the Black and Missing Foundation deserves our support and the support of all of our viewers. And we're hoping that after this HBO series, that support will just tremendously increase from all over America. We're doing good work, great work for the right cause. And the Black Press of America, we support you 100%.
Yeah, the NMPA has been following for several years the Black and Missing Foundation and the plight of missing people of color. Please support the Black and Missing Foundation. You can reach them online at www.blackandmissinginc.com. Again, that's www.blackandmissinginc.com, or you can call them at 1-877-972634. I think I'm missing a digit there, Natalie.
So if they can go to bamfi.org, you can contact us there. You can submit a tip. You can donate. You can subscribe to our newsletter. So just go to bamfi.org.
There you go. And if a loved one has gone missing, please call 911 immediately. Reach out to the Black and Missing Foundation. And again, don't miss this very important documentary. It's a 4-part series that airs on HBO starting on November 23rd. Black and Missing is the title of the documentary. We thank you so much, Natalie and Derrica, again. And thank you all for joining us. Shawn, appreciate you this morning. And of course, the NMPA will continue its coverage of missing people of color. And thanks to the Black and Missing Foundation, we'll be able to bring you even more information. Everybody stay safe and have a great weekend.
Thank you.